At 19:15, on the 27th of September 1994, the Ro-Ro passenger ferry MS Estonia departed Tallinn, Estonia, en route for Stockholm, Sweden, which would take approximately 15.5 hours to cross the Baltic. The ship's car deck was eventually filled with vehicles, and it had a total of 989 passengers and crew on board, which was approximately half of the vessel's carrying capacity. Once Estonia had cleared port, it began to work up to its operational speed of 15 knots, using all 4 of its diesel engines, and weather at this point was moderate, but was expected to deteriorate as Estonia breached into deeper waters. This would occur at approximately 2300 hours, when Estonia was struck by a significant wave on its port bow, which jolted the ship. Captain Andresen, who was not on the bridge at that moment, returned to the bridge to get a situation check. He then ordered that after the next course change, the fin stabilizers should be extended, as Estonia was noticeably rolling and pitching more aggressively. The storm by this point was becoming more aggressive, as the wind speed had increased from approximately 10 meters per second on a southerly course to 20 meters per second on a southwesterly course, and this was resulting in wave heights of about 4 meters. After observing the situation and deteriorating weather for about an hour, Captain Andresen recognized the situation was under control, and he was not needed on the bridge at that time, and so at approximately 12:10 a.m. on the 28th of September, he would depart the bridge. A few minutes later, at 12:25 a.m., Estonia reached its waypoint and altered its westerly course to a northwesterly course with a heading of 287 degrees. Once this turn had been completed, as the captain had ordered, the fin stabilizers were extended in an attempt to relieve the roll and pitching of the ship, and speed was slightly reduced to 14.5 knots. A few minutes later, at 12:30 a.m., able-bodied seaman Silverlinda, who was one of the 3 men on watch at the bridge, would conduct his next round of checks across the ship. He would descend to deck 7 and inspect crew cabins, then ascend to deck 8, and from there work his way down to the car deck. Initially, everything on the car deck seemed as it did on his previous round. There was still rainwater entering the car deck via the ventilation system, but the ship was noticeably rolling and pitching heavier than it was previously, and he had to support himself against the ship's bulkheads and parked vehicles. He worked his way towards the bow ramp, and, while he was standing next to it, a significant wave struck the bow of the ship, and he heard a loud bang, which he would later describe as metal hitting metal. After hearing this bang, it was reported that the ship's trim became more erratic and unpredictable. As a result of the sound, Silverlinda reported to the bridge via portable radio that he had heard a bang, and they had told him to try and ascertain the cause of the bang. He inspected the ramp seal and noted that no water was entering from the bow of the ship. He then moved over to the indicator panel, opening it up and confirming that all of the lights for the bow visor and ramp locks indicated green, which meant they were still closed. At approximately 12:50 a.m., he would depart the car deck, having found no cause of the bang and noticing no unusual flooding. At the same time, Walters Kakustis was attempting to sleep in the forward port stairwell with a friend, as they had done many times previously, and they had felt a significant lurching of the ship as heavy waves struck the bow shortly after midnight. He had noted that the forward searchlight at the very tip of the ship was on, and for the next half hour he would continue to watch the bow as it rode up and down on the waves. But this would change at 12:28, according to his watch, when he started to notice a section of the forecastle was jumping up and down independently from the rest of the ship. He could clearly see a transverse opening in the deck that water would spray out of, with a greater volume seeming to appear from the starboard side rather than the port side. Down in the engine control room at midnight, 3rd Engineer Margus True was coming on shift, relieving the 4th Engineer. When entering the control room, he noted that the ship had a 1-degree list to starboard, for which the 4th Engineer would inform him that the list had been greater earlier in the voyage at approximately 4 degrees, but he had filled the the port side ballast tanks to their tops in order to compensate the list. Being stationed in the engine control room offered him a unique view, as there was a video monitor that connected to several cameras within the car deck and the engine room, and he could see, at approximately 1 a.m., the able-bodied seaman Silverlinda on the car deck inspecting the bow ramp. At this point, he reported nothing abnormal in the cameras, and he saw no water entering the ship through the bow ramp. Returning to AB Seaman Silverlinda, he would return to the bridge a couple of minutes before 1 a.m. Now it is time for me to note that because the third engineer had stated he had seen Silverlinda on the car deck at 1 a.m., it appears that the engine room clock was running 10 to 15 minutes ahead of everyone else's. As Silverlinda entered the bridge, Captain Andressen also returned to the bridge. Noises from the bow were persistent, and complaints were being received. Linda looked out the forward bridge windows and could see the light atop the jackstaff at the forward end of the visor, indicating to him that the visor was still there and in place. After making that observation, Second Officer Tormy Ainslow turned to Linda and told him in a calm demeanor to wake up the bosun, who was in charge of the bow visor and ramp, and for the two men to return to the car deck and carry out a further inspection to find where the noises were coming from. As he descended to the car deck, he noted that the ship had taken on an increased, but light list to the starboard side, and some passengers were also approaching him, mentioning the list. The situation remained calm until Linda was on Deck 5 at approximately 1:05 a.m., when the ship heavily lurched over to the starboard side and retained a significant list. He ran down from Deck 5 to Deck 4, and upon reaching the next staircase to descend to Deck 3, he found it was packed with panicked passengers, and he recognized he could make it no further down, and he began to ascend back to the upper decks. Back in the engine control room, Third Engineer True had noticed 2 significant blows to the bow of the ship, which changed the atmosphere. He quickly looked at the monitor, taking into account that the engine room clock said 1:15, and he had seen a significant amount of waters spraying in from the sides of the bow ramp. Motorman Hannes Kadak had been in the workshop when the list developed, and he entered the engine control room and looked on the monitor, observing waves running down the car deck and that the water level had risen to the roofs of the cars. Systems engineer Heinrich Celesta had been in the engine room when the list developed, and he also made his way to the control room, finding the other 2 men observing the monitor. When looking at the monitor, he could see significant amounts of water spraying in at the sides of the ramp, with more coming in from the starboard side than the port side. Within a few minutes, the men would note that the camera facing the bow ramp was overtaken by water, and the picture was no longer clear. They had no view of the bow ramp. By this point, it is assumed that the ramp had fallen completely open, allowing the sea to uncontrollably enter the car deck. From this point forward, there was nothing that the crew could do to alter the course of future events. With that having been said, that is all I have to add on to this topic for today. So, if you have learned something new in this video, why not leave a like and a comment down below, and have a wonderful day.